Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations, Conversations, and Conversations again. For those who are here for the first time, I want to share a little about this. Conversations are an attempt to open the field of awareness to motivate women to honor oneself enough to move forward in our lives with confidence, no matter where we are. And I also want to share that we have a new website, iehorizons.com, and now you can view our past recordings and videos over there, read a little more about our presenters as well. And I really thank each one of our presenters who have shared their experiences and knowledge so generously to help each one of us. And today we have another session with Dr. Lakshmi Kannan. In the past, she has been sharing a lot about anxiety. In each of the sessions, she has taken a different aspect, how it impacts our mental health and our daily life. So Dr. Lakshmi Kannan is the founder and lead psychologist at Powerful Insight Psychologist in Vancouver, BC. Her doctoral research focused on the efficacy of diverse therapeutic strategies. It includes many specialized therapies, and it also includes EMDR, one of them, what I know of a little. She possesses the expertise to facilitate significant shifts in a remarkably short span. And those who have attended the past sessions can fully understand how she can impact, how her work can impact our lives. Today, she will be sharing her insights on social media anxiety and what emanates from discrimination and cultural identity because of this impact of social media in our life. So we have Dr. Kannan here again with us. Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi Kannan, for coming back for another session on social media and anxiety. We were discussing about that, and I also know that you weren't feeling well yesterday, and thank you for making it. So, shall we start with the question?
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yes, I'm happy to be here. And of course, yes, I'm feeling good today and very happy to be able to.
Thank you. So, I have been watching, in fact, we all have children and we see people around really involved, and now social media is at the peak. I mean, it couldn't have been, I can't imagine anything without social media. Everything is social media. And so do you believe that social media contributes to anxiety, or does it help to mitigate it? Like what is it? Because it is so so closely woven in our lives now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's almost like today, if you go to a restaurant, you can't even go to a restaurant without people clicking pictures of their food. They're always on their phone. And with all the development and technology, it's just become almost integral, right? Like you rightly said, it's become almost a part of our consciousness almost, right? And this has been a concern. There have been studies, there have been quite some research. Of course, from a media perspective, it's still young in that it's, the last 20 years really that it's really kind of accelerated and become a part of our life. But I will give you an idea in terms of what we have been finding. And that's an excellent question because oftentimes we don't realize that something like social media, something that's so close to us, and something, that is inanimate, right? Often we think of anxiety as being caused by somebody else or something else, but we don't realize that our even like the communication on social media can actually be enhancing our anxiety. So indeed, a lot of research have indicated that excessive use of social media is linked to higher vulnerabilities, exacerbation of depression, anxiety, loneliness, and even self-harm.
Yeah.
So this, to me is definitely a big concern. And when I do work, especially with young and even older people, I always check in terms of, yeah, how much is their use with social media? I also work with parents, so I often get a lot of parents who are concerned about their child's excessive attachment even to social media. If they can't hang on to their phones, it makes them anxious. So we'll talk a little bit about the kind of red flags or warning signs. But I do want to also say that social media is another medium. So in many ways, it does also, or it was really invented to bring us together, right? When we talk about Facebook, it was really initially kind of brought in, invented, it was a big thing to bring people together, reconnect schoolmates, college mates, actually mitigate loneliness because there may be distance. During the COVID, it definitely was a wonderful way to keep people connected. It's often a great way of, feeling some sense of belonging, especially in those kind of environments where you can't physically be in touch with people. It's a good source of information. So, like any other media, it really is up to us how we use this. It's a tool, but it is a much more powerful tool than any other media that's been in our life, like books or television, because that was very general. You could turn off the television or, close that book, or you could really choose. Whereas with social media, oftentimes it's always coming to you and it's always next to you. It's always part of your every moment. And more importantly, how it works is probably the key to us realizing how we can turn this around and make this a powerful tool for mitigating our anxiety or for creating our sense of belonging and identity. Um, and that is that when you're on social media, the likes you get, the interaction you get actually releases something called dopamine in your brain. And, we may have heard of it in terms of other kind of addictions that, oh, it's the dopamine surge, right? Like sometimes we've heard of that. So social media works more or less in very similar ways, that it gives us that feeling of high, like there's a rush of excitement. Um, and what happens when that rush of excitement goes down is we want more, of course, right? And that's the cycle that often gets us engaged, but very quickly can get us into excessive use and even addiction. There is something called social media addiction. And again, the underlying component is often anxiety. So people reach out to social media sometimes to, allay their anxiety, but oftentimes it's that vicious cycle. It gives them more anxiety, and then they have to go back to it in search of it, maybe shifting that space again. And, before they know it, they are caught in this vicious cage. And I'll talk about, the acronym CAGE in terms of red flags a little later, perhaps. But it kind of traps them in this cage where you cannot do with and you cannot do without, right?
Yeah, so what are the signs actually that this social media impacts people negatively? Can we see that something, is there a pattern that one can be aware of, or what we are seeing, uh, about people in front of us, our children?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. And, I'll talk first about, just in terms of why people get anxiety from social media. There are a number of reasons. And if any of this rings a bell for you as your reactions once you've been on social media, then yes, you do need to look into yourself a little deeper. So, number one, when you get off the social media, are you comparing yourself? Okay. The very big kind of question is, do you find yourself thinking or ruminating about, oh, this person looks so good, or this person looks so happy, or that person, is just so in, and then immediately comparing it to yourself, right? So, yeah, but I am not. So I'm not as beautiful, I'm not as good looking, I'm not as happening, I don't go to those places. Somewhere I'm lesser than, less luckier than, or less worthy than. And that's a very, very big red flag. Because as we talked previously on anxiety, what is that underlying cause of anxiety? That somehow we are left behind, somehow we are lesser than. And if getting onto social media emphasizes those feelings and you find yourself thinking about it, then absolutely, that's something that you need to look at. Okay. The second is, and this is pretty, commonly talked about, the FOMO, fear of missing out. So if you're not on your phone, on the social media, are you anxious that you're missing out something? Even in just that half hour, or by the time you wake up, whatever, right? Like, am I missing out something? And frantically kind of refreshing when you put a post, are you frantically kind of checking, oh, has someone commented yet? Has someone said something yet? Right? Like you're constantly going back to it and you have this underlying fear or anxiety of missing out. Um, Third is, are you anxious when you're trying to, host? So are you overthinking? Are you on a vacation, but your head is constantly in, oh, what should I be wearing? What should the background be? Oh, this would look cool. We know a lot of youngsters that, have got into serious grave danger, even died because of needing to have that perfect picture or that perfect post. So this overthinking about your posts, overthinking about, oh, what did this comment mean? Or, oh, if this person liked, why do they like it? Or why did I only get so many likes, right? Like, how many likes is just right for you, right? Or if the first half hour, when I work with clients, I've actually had a client who said, yeah, if I don't get a like in the first half hour, she can't think of anything else. And she ruminates what she should have done different. Um, Sometimes once the post is up, you can't really modify it. So there are so many different aspects that cause a person to be overthinking, over ruminating. If you find yourself there and it's creating you anxiety, if you're constantly changing poses, costumes, smiles, hairstyles, whatever, right? That's another sign of underlying anxiety that is being triggered by the social media. In terms of parents, some of these are similar, but obviously you don't quite know how your child is engaging. But I'll give you a quick acronym if you want to just check off for yourself in terms of, yeah, is my use excessive? Is this actually bordering on being addicted? And it's a beautiful acronym called CAGE, CAGE, which is used often in kind of substance use and addiction. But, I've kind of modified it to adapt to social media use. And this is very quick and easy. This is the cage. So are you in a cage? CAGE. So the C is really that, yeah, are you consumed, right? Are you really consumed? And from a parent's perspective, are you now at a point where you're really needing to tell your child to cut down? So if people are telling you to cut down, if you're thinking, yeah, I probably should, because I'm not really engaging with people. So social media can never really replace that real in-person interaction that is actually helpful in mitigating real anxiety, loneliness, depression. When you meet somebody in person, um, there are some, and just to put it in a simple terms, there are some, both your brain and body receives certain signals which set off those happy hormones. And that really is why we feel good when we actually talk to people in person, right? And especially a good friend, a deep conversation. But social media cannot completely substitute. So even though it's a way of connecting, it doesn't give you that deep satisfaction, right? So it's really that piece that, yeah, are you getting overconsumed? With the C stands for consumption. Like, is it just consuming who you are? Is your identity now becoming the social media identity? Are you trying to be that person that you're showing yourself to be on social media, so much so that you've lost touch with your real self, right? And from a parent's perspective, yeah, if your child or teenager is really at a point where they're neglecting other activities because they're constantly on their phone, that's a big red flag. The second is the A of the cage. The cage is anxious or annoying. So is the habit reached a point where, yeah, if you don't have internet, the internet goes, or someone is, saying that, like a parent to a child, saying, I'll cut your data, does that throw you into a frenzy, right? Or is it that, yeah, if you can't find your phone or you can't charge it, even for a little while, it makes you anxious. It makes you wonder, oh my gosh, am I missing out? Is someone, saying something to me? It makes a person feel so uneasy. One of the reasons is that dopamine, which is kind of crashed. It's kind of that high you get when you have a drink or caffeine or sugar. And after a while, you suddenly feel this slump, right? And you feel this low feeling, you feel jittery, you feel anxious. Are you reaching that space? And are you annoyed if someone says you got to stop that? Or are you annoyed if someone says it's too long, right? That you've been on that. So those are good kind of indicators for you to start really introspecting. Yeah, is this something that is a tool I am using, or is the tool using me, right? Because we know social media companies thrive on users, but are they using you, or are you using this medium to really better yourself in your life? The G stands for guilt. So guilt is really about, getting carried away, being on social media or posting things, and then later like regretting, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, ruminating over, oh, why did I say that? Why should I do that? Self-doubting, or missing out on important things, right? Because you're on social media, you didn't reach your deadlines, you missed your mate's birthday, whatever, and that can happen too. Or you just wish them online without even being able to meet them or give them a call. So there is often, believe it or not, a lot of people who have excessive use do feel guilty. They don't necessarily show it. And this is important, like you asked me about parents to realize, because parents often think that, this child, the teenager, is not aware, and they, because they may not necessarily communicate back in words, they tend to put more and more and more pressure. But the child is often already feeling a lot of guilt, right? And at some level, they already can sense that they're not fully in control. And that also leads to guilt. And the last piece of the cage, and that's the E, is it your eye opener? That when you wake up in the morning, do you reach for that phone automatically? and is the first thing that you need to turn to your social media. And if you don't do it, you just don't feel right, right? So a lot of youngsters, a lot of people nowadays, it's almost become their wake up messiah, right? You feel, you turn it on, your brain suddenly like ring, it turns on. But if the social media is down or you can't find your phone, whatever, you often don't feel stimulated in. So those are some of the red flags. And again, for parents, those are something to kind of watch out for.
Yeah. Yes, this is interesting. A lot of information and so do you think that social media influences in particular, our personal and cultural identity as well? We are, everyone is migrating all over the globe within communities too, so is there any, are we looking at any gender as well, gender or age group in particular?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting how the social media in some ways has really made the world almost kind of almost strip them of the various colors and flavors of cultural identity, right? Someone who is living on the other end of the globe, like say, China or India, um, are looking at, people, things on this side of the globe and, trying to become like somebody else. So, to your question, does this impact your own sense of self, your personal identity? It can. It definitely can. And is it coloring your cultural identity? It can. It can also, in some ways, skew that cultural identity. And I'll tell you how. Social media really works in terms of as a mechanism or a machine. Each social media platform have their own algorithms. And you do remember that the social media company who you're, accessing that platform through, their real kind of goal is obviously profits, right? They want to keep staying in business. They want to get as much profits as possible. So for that, they need more users, they need more likes. And that's where, this whole trend of, yeah, as you get more likes, you even get remunerated, rewarded by being paid in money, by being paid in stars. So there are various ways social media polarizes people. So, in terms of cultural identity, often what we have found, especially in the past few years, is that it does have the potential to really polarize people into believing that, okay, if my cultural identity is this, then without even realizing consciously, even at a subconscious level, we start adhering to what we call the demand characteristics that, yeah, if you're, a Black person, then yeah, look at what's happening to Black people. And, there's all this negativity around that. Or if you're, someone who's an Indian, or if you're someone who's Chinese or Asian, right? Like there are all of these almost dogmas now that are being spread on social media, and that can skew your cultural identity. I think the natural process that, without social media, if you think about it, how would your identity have evolved? So, you step into a school and, hey, I am a person who is, let's say, I am a smart, talkative, and let's say fun loving person. And then you go into social media, and then the where you get likes is now smart is not so in anymore, right? So now I need to start maybe dumbing myself down a little bit because, hey, I'm not getting the kind of feedback that I want. So you are actually giving your shaping of your own identity or your child's identity in the hands of others. And oftentimes they're connected to their peers. So, in the hands of, other people who may be as anxious or misguided, right? And that's why there is this whole kind of competition, comparison on social media of, hey, I'm better, I have better hair. Oh, tomorrow somebody else, they go and, get one up on you. And then very soon what you notice is that the signals that you're giving to your brain and nervous system is that, you know what, spend more energy on maybe my hairstyle, or maybe, I need to seek out wild and crazy things to do because my buddy is getting more attention than I am, right? And it becomes this constant craving of attention. And where I get attention, I start spending more energy rather than being at that space of choice and control where I choose who I am. This is who I am because I want to be this way, rather than this is who I am or becoming because other people like this image of me. And that disconnect between who you are and who you need to be actually causes a deep identity crisis, which then triggers a lot of um, depression, anxiety, and that sense of loneliness. Because I've often had someone say that, yeah, if I didn't wear that social mask, I don't know if anybody would like me. And that's because they've never dared to show who they are, right? Um, and similarly with cultural identity, instead of allowing the true principles of culture to shape you, we again allow strangers almost, people who may even have vested interests, maybe politicians, maybe social advocates, people who are biased. Even the whole social media platform company is designed to really reinforce your unconscious biases or conscious biases, right? We all have those. We all have stereotypes on, oh, women are like this, teenagers are like that, right? Indigenous folks, there is a certain image, Asian, certain image. Um, so what the social media platforms do is they will send you, oh, this is a similar video to what you would like, and this is a similar video to what. So they're actually hijacking your consciousness, your inner voice of wisdom, your inner knowing of who you are and what your culture is. So that's the threat. Yes.
Yeah, this is kind of discriminatory, right? Like you're discriminating yourself, you're promoting your own discrimination. This is, I mean, of course, I don't know what you feel, what is your perception on that, but I'm getting that kind of sense that are we allow, I mean, kind of we allow ourselves to be discriminated. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Yes. Polarized communities are at their peak today across the globes. Whether you go into the Americas or the Asias, kids seem to have an opinion about something. And where do they got their information from? The social media. So what you're saying is true. In some ways, this does feed into a discrimination culture. Yes. Can there be some positives? Yes. It can also make you aware if you are being discriminated against, right? So the media is a platform where the information is available on both sides. But what typically your platform kind of shows up, whether it's YouTube or Instagram, the feeds that it feeds you are often those which are emotionally potent. And emotionally potent is always related to drama and polarization, right? So some terrible bad news story, and that immediately triggers a kind of emotional response. And often an emotional response overrides your intellectual ability to be balanced and analytical, right? So, yeah, you see the story if you are, with the recent kind of Middle East crisis on either side of that terrible conflict currently. people are shown the atrocities created or atrocities meted out by the other side on people of your community, of your culture. And you're not necessarily getting a balanced view, right? In a conflict, there is deep trauma and loss on both sides. And so it is polarizing you, it is stimulating that emotional response. And that emotional response is of fear and hatred and anger and anxiety, right? And that's really the place where discrimination begins. When these kids or teenagers or even young adults, as they grow up, you are developing between those ages your deep sense of morality, of what is right and wrong in the world, what is fair or unfair. And if your perception is so colored, yes, as you grow, what you're going to bring into the world is already that deep sense of bias or prejudice, right? Um, and that deep sense of prejudice does and will lead to this constant cycle of discrimination. And that's the real danger. If you look back in history, um, you know, we see some of the great anti-heroes or the anti-leaders, like Hitler, for example. He was deeply influenced by, in those times, a book, and it was a singular book, which talked about Aryan supremacy. And then he continued that legacy with his own book. And what it led to was a whole world where, one race was discriminated against. So even though it affords belonging, are we really needing for us to belong to one group to make other groups bad or evil or in some ways inferior or contemptuous, right? So these are very deep questions. And from the perspective of the individual, what I would definitely encourage when you're getting onto social media is to realize that social media, to a great extent, is an illusion, right? People post things that are not real. You can enhance pictures, you know that for yourself. You can present things. How much of that is the truth? No one really knows. And that includes supposed news media channels. Yeah, do we want to stay informed? Yes. But you don't want to allow yourself to get inundated. And like I said, do you really want to give that which you've been born with, the ability to have free will, free choice, for you to choose who you are, for you to choose how you want to engage with humanity? What is it that you want to contribute? How do you want to lift those barriers of discrimination? Are you going to give that up to random strangers that do not necessarily have your best interests or the best interest of their fellow human beings as their top priority?
Yeah, yes, it's quite a bit again here, like it is a powerful tool, and we need to use it. We need to use it in our daily life. Or some people are using it as a means to work. It is their profession. They are involved in it, and then it becomes 24 hours. But there are other people who are making use of that and engaged with it. So how should people be agree that it is a powerful tool, and it is a disruption too? It adds to discrimination. And how do we, tell ourselves, like a part of it you have already, like maybe probably affirming to yourself, what is the benefit, what I am doing to myself? But how do we really overcome this? It becomes like an addiction, like,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and you made a good point in terms of professionals who need to work on it, and people who are viewing it initially, just like it starts with any other substance, starts for fun, right? Like, yeah, I'm enjoying, I'm getting this high, I'm feeling good. And then, like you said, it very quickly takes over almost our entire psyche, right? So much so that all, your preferences, your tastes, even your food that you eat is sometimes influenced by this social, invisible kind of force that makes us, influences us, and almost controls our being. So your question is very valid in terms of, yeah, how do we step back? Where do we set the boundaries? And what if we work on it? So first thing to remember and acknowledge is that anything that you expose to your brain, our brain has evolved over several hundreds of years. And the reality is that images, sounds, when something graphic and sensory is presented to it, it often cannot distinguish between what is real and what is fantasy or what is at a distance. When, initially the Israel-Palestine conflict came out, there were a lot of calls and cries for help because they actually made these pop-ups, right, on both sides to propagate, kind of propagate their cause. And it was actually traumatizing, literally traumatizing a lot of individuals when they saw those graphic images. So the first thing to realize is that it is a powerful tool. And really to say, am I the master here or am I the slave? Right? And that sounds extreme, but it's very powerful. And we all like to think we are masters, but take a day where you put your phone away or you switch off your social media, delete the app, it's going to be on the cloud, and see how you feel. Take a walk, have discussions with people, and see how that makes you feel. See if any of the red flags actually apply to you. Similarly, with people who need to work on social media, and there is a lot of people that need to work as content moderators because there is so much violence, there is so much cyberbullying on the social media nowadays that we do have, kind of the cyber police, you have content moderators, and they are exposed to this on a daily, almost uh, you know, hourly basis, right? Because I read an article recently that, every minute almost there is some video or post being uploaded, which is violence, which is aggression, which is bullying, which is, really stuff that is not healthy for us. And we are not even, necessarily um, the one targeted through that, but we will be impacted.
Yeah.
The same nervous system is reacting to that. And this is again, like I said, we could measure brain waves of people who are actually dealing with that. So people who work in those professions actually do have long-term impacts. And, it is advisable for them to check in with, a mental health professional, just to see where they're doing and to keep checking in with their own well-being. Because not only for them, but for all of us, there is the impact that we can recognize. Okay, maybe we're using a little too much. Maybe I don't feel like going out and meeting, let's say, grandma, because, I'm more interested to connect with my friends. Or even if I am at grandma's, I'm zoned out. I don't know who's saying what because I'm on my phone, right? Or in an adult kind of perspective, yeah, are you hearing really your spouse? I've had actually worked with couples who come in, and one of the complaints of one of the spouses is, I'm never heard. And the other person, but I'm always there. Like, yes, but you're always on your phone, right? So just to recognize how much it's impinging on your life. So in terms of strategies, I'll give you quick 3 strategies, which is one, of course, is the awareness. So once you have the awareness, the next step is substitution. Yeah, if you realize I am stuck, I feel all those CAGE symptoms, Dr. Lakshmi, what do I do? First step is, yes, how do you substitute some of that time? Going cold turkey is one option, but oftentimes for people who already have underlying anxiety, that anxiety gets exacerbated and it becomes almost intolerable. So starting so start substituting some of that time that you're connecting. Maybe instead of getting on the social media and posting what you do, call some friends or meet people in person. When you don't actually, you know, connect always on your social media, and you let people know, you know what, I'm not on, Instagram anymore, whatever. And they'll say, oh my gosh, what happened, whatever. But you'll see soon enough, people will be calling you to say, hey, do you know what happened? This happened. Or, hey, do you want to go there? This great event is happening. And instead of thinking, did I miss out? You're going to say to yourself, you are having someone filter information and bring it to you. So that's another good strategy. Once that you are able to substitute, then you really need to build, and this is kind of the third strategy, which is, yeah, build your own sense of that identity. When you dive within yourself, you will find that it's so exciting, right? In terms of just discovering who you are and, yeah, what are other things that you're good at? Or, yeah, if you didn't have people watching you, or you didn't have to post something, or if you didn't have to constantly connect on YouTube, or you didn't have to constantly need other people to stimulate, you will find that your nervous system has all it needs to really create that fun, exciting life, those happy hormones.
Yeah.
And finally, seek support, right? So seek support, whether it's friends, a parent, a mental health professional. Sometimes it is easier to connect with somebody who's a professional, who's non-judgmental, who knows what you're going through and gets it, rather than says it's your lack of control or your willpower, that somehow it's your fault, right? It's nobody's fault. The social media is that giant that's out there. And just like, anything else in life, yeah, we can all slip, we can all get sucked. We all have those moments where we may be more vulnerable. And, we may have given up some of our freedom or our own power to social media. And it's time to reclaim it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have one last question, not really in line with that, but something that does, draw my attention is the outcome of cyberbullying, in particular, school-going high school girls and, maybe, girls around 21, 22, very delicate situations. And how do parents identify that? Parents may not even know what's going on.
Yeah.
So is there?
Okay, let me address that, but let me clarify to you, cyberbullying is not restricted to children or young people, right? Or even young girls. It's men, women, there's workplace cyberbullying. There are many, many different ways that people can group together and, gaslight someone, or, spread rumors, create negative stories, post things about someone's weaknesses, vulnerabilities. So, yeah, yes, and you're right that the adolescent or young adult group is vulnerable, because that's the phase of life when you really often do see yourself through somebody else's mirror, right? You're often not looking at your own mirror, but you live your life looking at how somebody else is looking at you through their mirror. So that's what makes them a little more vulnerable, but it is highly prevalent, and it is prevalent in all ages. Okay. The ages that are on social media. Like I said, it's the last 20 years or so. So we are looking at, the Gen Y, Z, the millennials. Yeah, these are the ones who are impacted. So how do you stop that, or what do you do? Remember, what I said in terms of the power of your well-being, your happiness should always, that remote control should always remain in your hands. Why would you give it to a bunch of strangers or people who are not even your well-wishers, right? And we do that unconsciously, inadvertently, right? We always do that. But once you get present to that, you can take it back. So knowing that is important. From a parent's perspective, I am a strong advocate of parental collaboration, which means that, yeah, you want to realize that your worldview as a parent is going to be different. You've been through those phases of life and you can see beyond that, but they cannot. So having that sense of camaraderie is really important. If you come in from your own anxiety, oftentimes I find that the reason that the breakdown of communication happens between a parent and a child is because the parent's anxiety is so triggered and so high that the child needs almost to withdraw to protect themselves from that anxiety. You're putting threats that you can see in front of them, and that is fearful. And when you use fear to control a child or guide or support, what tends to happen is their nervous system will look at you as the perpetrator of that fear and shut you out. So if you want to enter someone's home, you have to have them open the door for you. And how do you do that is by dealing with your own anxieties, right? Dealing with your own kind of fears and say that, okay, this isn't about me. What is really true today? What is really true is, yes, perhaps my child is in a tight spot. Are they experiencing or showing signs of, anxiety because of social media? Or is there some kind of bullying that you suspect, right? And what is important that is that you set that up with your child as their primary well-wisher, as someone who collaborates with them. So it's really in the way you communicate and collaborate, and you set rules that, yeah, maybe at night the phone is left out. And you know, they are okay with their parents seeing it, because if you're not okay with your parents seeing something, it shouldn't have been on social media. But parents need to create that sense of safety first. So you can't, um, for several years be judgmental, overprotective, whatever, right? It always comes from a good place. I really work, with parents, and I know their heart and mind really comes from a good place. We want to save our kids from every peril and every kind of danger that could be out there. But what is equally important is that you empower them with the tools to be able to do so. So, giving them the tools that if interacting with somebody doesn't make you feel good, how do you gently withdraw without those ramifications? Because you'll often see children, oh my gosh, if I do this or say this, then tomorrow this could happen, that could happen, you know. And if you do suspect cyberbullying, again, creating a collaboration with the child, with, that even the young adult sometimes, right, needs parental support to say, yeah, let us support you. And maybe the way to support you is, by using some of the strategies, maybe going cold turkey, going slow, substituting, looking at how that person's life can be enriched, and maybe seeking, professional help, because then you know how to do it in a way that's not damaging. But if you're on your own as a young adult, know that if you step out of social media, and like I said, you can delete your account, you can create a new account, you can, delete the app for a while. There are different ways where you just step away from that and then begin with substituting it with something that's healthier. So the noise may still be going on, but when you step out of it, you have taken the remote control back for your happiness and your well-being in your hand.
That's very, very helpful. Very helpful. Thank you. It's been quite a while. Thank you for your time today again, and hope to see you sometimes again. It's been quite a few sessions all about anxiety. I never could have imagined that it can take so much time, and yet, there is so much more to it. Causes and what are the other factors that influence anxiety. And today we were talking about social media, the impact on your mental wellness, anxieties, mental wellness. Thanks again, and I do hope to see you sometimes later again.
My pleasure to support. And today your topic is definitely bang on. It is definitely one of those silent kind of pandemics. And it is important to realize that social media kind of stimulating anxiety and addiction can often be very debilitating. It can be very positive, but only if you recognize how to use that tool. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being there.
You're welcome. Support this initiative.